Hey there, welcome to First Look, and this is our last one for the month of August. So congratulations for basically getting through the summer. So this week we have, I think one of those texts that it's like one of those texts that you know, but it may not be the first one to kind of come to your head. And I chose it for a particular reason because I was trying to kind of get at something, and it's actually one of the few times that I'm not using something from a lectionary or something from like a set out program, for a season. This was an independent choice of my own that that hopefully I can kind of explain as we go. So, the reason that I chose this particular passage is because I got to the lectionary text for this week and I saw what it was. And it was the text about the wedding banquet. It's in the book of Luke. Now, that is a perfectly wonderful passage. It just happens to be a text that, for one reason or another, I feel like I have preached many times. And sometimes when you get to a place where you've preached one particular passage many times, you may feel like, well, I want to get at a certain idea, but I'm not sure that actually using this text will be the best way of getting to that idea. Because the text itself, if you think about the passage of the wedding banquet, and I think I can look it up for us to make sure I know exactly where it is. So the whole concept of that, it's in Luke chapter 14, verses 7 through 14. So in the text, it's talking to the group of people who are being invited to this wedding banquet. And the people who are being invited find a reason not to come. They're not worthy of coming, right? It's a combination of that, right? They are not those who are ready to receive the invitation, and so they are not those who ultimately come to this banquet, but the poor then are brought to this wedding banquet, which is a really fantastic text. And I felt like I wanted to really get to the idea of how it is that we change our minds and hearts. What gets to that particular thing. Because that text has a lot to do with if those of a certain class or a certain demographic aren't being who they're supposed to be, then God will invite the least of these. They have a more favored place. And I felt like I have been kind of talking about that in different ways over the last few weeks. And so I didn't want to just hit the same chord over and over and over again. I wanted to vary it slightly. Because I think that in order to care about how we see the world and how we invest in it, part of what we have to do is think about how we understand ourselves, how we understand our relationship with God, and then allow that to affect everything else. Not only the way that we see justice or see working with those who are struggling with poverty or what have you, but it allows us to kind of see everything around us, our relationships, our finances, our religious life, etc. It allows us to see everything differently. And so I wanted to kind of diverge slightly from that note and hit a slightly different one. So what I chose was these two texts of Philemon and then this passage in Jeremiah, which talks about the potter's clay. So the potter's clay passage is Jeremiah 18, and then which is 1 through 11, I think. Yeah, 1 through 11. And then the Philemon passage. So Philemon, which is a New Testament text, is this brilliant book, very, very short, all one chapter, where Paul is trying to advocate for another person. Okay, so the whole idea is that he's speaking to his friend and saying, listen, friend, I know that you will do this. This person needs help. This person has been, some things have happened in their lives and they've struggled, but they've also proven themselves to be worthy of love and care and another chance. And so I know that you, based on who you are and who we are together, will help, because that's who you are. And so I am going to send this person to you with confidence that you help them. And that is about their relationship and about the integrity of the person. And what I love about that text is, and there's lots of subtleties and little pieces of it, but if you boil down the content, Paul is allowing his relationship with that person to kind of usher in this this moment for this other person where they will receive what they need, and it's all based on trust. It's all based on a relationship. It's all based on bond, right? I have a bond with you. The reason I have that bond with you is because of who you are and who we are together. That trust, that bond is strong enough, and you are strong enough as a part of that bond to take this responsibility on and to do it well. And I have full trust that you will do that. That idea, that piece of it, speaks to so much of the way I think that we ultimately change the world around us. Because when we see each other, when we see our problems as issues, like when we think about the poor, or we think about the outcast, or we think about those who are the victims of racial discrimination, that is the way that we categorize people, the way that we group them together, is a way also, it's not on purpose, but it is a way for us to kind of turn humans into issues. But if you know John or Jane or whoever, if you have a relationship with them, if you're invested in them, if they're invested in you, it is far harder to give up on that person, to ignore that person's needs, to simply dismiss them as whatever. And that's how things change. Yeah, someone, I'm not sure if I've met them in real life, but I kind of know, we know the same people, and I followed his work, and he's done a lot of nonprofit work, and he's done church work, and he's lived in a couple of different areas, and he's worked with those who are have a whole host of issues. And he did a TED Talk once on poverty, which is one of the more, like, one of those talks that really sticks with you. And he said a couple of things that were extraordinarily important that I still think about today. One is the fact that any of us are a couple of mistakes away from being in a situation where we can't help ourselves anymore, right? A diagnosis, or a broken relationship, or a death in the family, or a tragedy in some way, shape, or form, and then followed by one decision after another, and then you burn a bridge, and then you're in a really awful spot. And that happens all of the time. And the difference between the people who ultimately have the opportunity to make it out of that situation, whatever it happens to be, and those who cannot make it out of that situation, usually has to do with, he called it with their Rolodex, but that's a little bit of a dated kind of reference at this point. But the people that you know, how many people could you call right now who are in your phone or listed in a book that would help if you needed it, right? How many people can you call at 1 a.m. if you have a problem? That the difference between those who have those people, who have those human resource safety nets, and those who do not, makes all the difference in the world. And that's what Paul is talking about. And so as we move into from that idea to the Jeremiah passage, which we're going to read about in a second, the whole text is about how God can kind of change us and mold us into the people who are faithful and who look outside of ourselves, and that whoever we have been does not have to be who we are permanently. And what I like about pairing those two is that on one side, it makes me think, and it reminds me that whoever I have been, I don't always have to be that, right? I am not stuck in that same mindset or that same track forever. But also, neither is the person in front of me. You know, anything that can be true for me can be true for the person in front of me. And that I need to be able to see people in situations as changeable, moldable, right? Able to be worked with. And the way it happens, the way it's sort of teased out in the passage in Jeremiah, is that God is the potter and we are the clay, right? That there's a hands-on. God doesn't just say, go and change yourself. God is invested in the changing, which then means that we are invested in the changing. We are invested in what needs to be improved. And that in some ways what Paul does with Philemon, you know, takes on this kind of these projects and problems that this person has, invests in them, and then trusts that another person who has invested in Paul and he is invested in them will do the same, will continue that work, right? It's a reflective kind of response to the way that we see God moving in our own lives. And certainly the way Paul has seen God moving in his life. One who did not leave him the same, but molded him into, someone who could not only receive who Christ was, but then also live his life differently. So let me pause right there and read the text so you can see for yourself what it is I'm talking about. So again, this is Jeremiah 18, 1 through 11. Now the important thing to know, I scrolled up real fast just to see what was before. The important thing to know here is that Jeremiah just got done in chapter 17 talking to the people about Sabbath. And he says, basically, Judah, Jerusalem, all the people, listen to me. You need to be those who honor who God is by keeping the Sabbath holy, which is just another way of saying that you need to adhere to and focus your time and energy and practice on being faithful to God and God's commands. That is where you need to be. And so right after saying that, he says the following. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Come, go down to the potter's house, and there I will let you hear my words. So I went down to the potter's house, and there he was, working at his wheel. And the vessel he was making of clay was spoiled in the potter's hands, and so he reworked it into another vessel, as seemed good to him. Then the word of the Lord came to me. Can I not do with you, O house of Israel, just as this potter has done, says the Lord? Just like the clay in the potter's hand, so are you in my hand, O house of Israel. At one moment I may declare concerning a nation or a kingdom that I will pluck up and break down and destroy it. But if that nation concerning which I have spoken turns from its evil, I will change my mind about the disaster that I intended to bring on it. And at another moment I will declare concerning a nation or a kingdom that I will build and plant it. But if it does evil in my sight, not listening to my voice, then I will change my mind about the good that I intended to do to it. Now therefore, says the people of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, thus says the Lord, look, I am a potter shaping evil against you and devising a plan against you. Turn now, all of you, from your evil way and amend your ways and your doings. The language in there has a real tenseness to it. I think intentionally. Jeremiah is someone who has spent many, many chapters and will spend many, many chapters trying to convince the people in as strong a language as possible, as strong a language as they need, that something needs to change. And if you have read enough of Jeremiah, you know that some of the passages about trying to enlist hope in the people, some of it is trying to convince them that the direction that they're going is the wrong one. And much like the other prophets, there's also this heavy threat of exile kind of surrounding them. Which is why you get like the when Jeremiah buys a field, you know, there's that passage about like they're about to be taken into exile, but he buys a field, and it seems foolish that he would buy this field when they're about to be taken away, but it's this hopeful thing. Well, there's that element that Jeremiah is trying to give the people an understanding of what it means to live faithfully and what it means to live hopefully and what it means to lean into God's care. And later on in Jeremiah, one of the more famous texts from the book, Jeremiah describes this new covenant that will be written on their hearts. No longer will God have to write covenants or laws down in the ways, teach them these covenants or laws. They will just know them in their hearts. That's where this is kind of leading to. This kind of relationship with the people that is just innate within them. And I think getting to that place, whether we're talking about the molding of them, the sharing of the promise with them, the hope that they can find in God, all of these things need trust, just like Philemon did, right? That you think about the Philemon passage, and it's about relationship and trust and leaning on and being willing to do the work and being willing to give of oneself in order to help others, right? And I wanted to use these texts, one, because I think they're very powerful, and two, because I think they speak well into each other, right? Written at very different times for very different reasons, but they both speak to this trusting relationship between God and people, and between people and people. And so that's the kind of thing I wanted to kind of highlight, because the passage I'm not preaching on, the one with the wedding banquet, all of that is broken down. If you read that text in Luke 14 or other wedding banquet texts in the Gospels, what you'll find is that the one who's inviting people to the banquet and those who were supposed to come to the banquet, something has broken down. Their relationship, their trust, their leaning on each other, their mutual kind of understanding of how the world should be, all of that has kind of deteriorated, which is why the one who's having the banquet does something else. And so those lessons of leaning into relationship and trust and work are woven throughout Scripture very intentionally, because those are the things that break down so easily. Which is why we have confession every week. And many times in confession, what we talk about is, I have not done as you have asked. I have only thought of myself. I have not seen my neighbor the way that you see my neighbor. I have not seen myself the way that you see me. Something is broken down. And the only way that it's going to be healed again is trust and relationship and care for the person in front of you, and not just some issue or idea. Which is why it's so incredibly important to be able to see the face of the people that you are helping in some way, shape, or form. Which is why you are much more likely to dedicate something or to care about something if someone that you trust cares about it, right? You'll go to a restaurant because someone that you know likes it, or someone that you trust their opinion likes it. You will give to a charity because you have some personal connection with that charity, or someone that you know does, or you have heard them face to face talk about it. Like, those are the things that we rely on. Like, we're just hardwired for that. And that's what God tries to present to us in this text, in all of these texts, because that is ultimately what we struggle with forever. And I wanted to highlight that as carefully and as poignantly as I could. And so I chose to go in this direction. So I hope that works. So here's what I would do if I were you. First, I would look at the text I'm not preaching on, which is Luke 14. Look at that just for context. And then read Philemon. It's one, you get to say you read a whole book of the Bible if you do, because it's one chapter. So do that to kind of plant in your mind this relationship trust building we're talking about. And then from there, look at this text in Jeremiah 18. And I'm hoping that you'll appreciate it a little bit more because of that. Because it's not just closing your eyes and hoping that what God will do is turn you into something that you are not. Right? What can God do with me? It takes something mutual. It takes something, it takes a kind of trust. It takes time. And we can get it wrong if we are not being vigilant. And so I like the way that these texts cover that. So that's where I'm going. Okay. Well, that's what I have for you this time. I appreciate you like kind of working through all that. Sometimes I feel like I give you a lot of homework, but I do trust that you can handle it. So thank you for being you. Thank you for thinking through all these things with me. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time for another First Look. So take care.